You're on the Six Screens Telenetwork, earning the reputation of giving all the right ingredients, uninhibited in exposing the hard, cold facts about the Watchtower Society. And now, in Disney.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome in. Welcome into our first program for the night. We got a number of programs coming up tonight, but we have got Roland. He's coming in. He's a former Jehovah's Witness. He's coming in from the United Kingdom. And we have Chad. Chad is an opposer of the Watchtower. He's somewhat of a cult expert. He does a lot of research on the cults, and he's with us here tonight. And they're going to be doing the program Returning to Light. And I think tonight they're going to be sharing some thoughts from Jehovah's Witness publications. And I think you'll find the program very, very exciting. So I'm going to bring in Chad right now, and I'm going to bring Roland in. We're going to add them to the stream. So there they are right now. Hello, guys.
Hello, everybody.
So there you are. So we got you guys live here on YouTube, and we're getting more and more people coming in. You're also on Facebook and a number of other platforms as well. We're expanding. So we're hoping we're going to get a lot of people calling in tonight. I can already see there's a lot coming in so far. So I'm going to cut myself loose, and I'm going to leave it up to you guys. I'm here if you need me.
Thanks.
Thank you. Hi, Chad. So how's it going? You've been doing much this week?
I've been trying to do as little as possible. It's been really hot over here in Illinois. So,
Oh, yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, it was quite hot at the beginning of the week here. We had tarmac melting, and it's been a bit sweltering. But to be honest, in England, we like that, for a short while anyway. And then we'll start moaning about it after a little while, But yeah, it's all good. Anyway, I was looking online this week, and I just happened to notice how many things are out there. How many books are out there and things like that, written by ex-witnesses. I haven't, to be honest, I haven't read any of them myself, but I couldn't believe all those issues and copies of books were out there. And I sort of thought to myself, I wished I'd seen these when I was a JW, because I probably would have, towards the end, certainly I would have read them. And then I started getting me thinking about how the Watchtower JW org now are being exposed, right around the world, not just in books, but also YouTube and shows like Rick Show and other ones that do their shows. People are being interviewed on radio and stuff. I was interviewed on local radio in England some months ago, well, about a year ago now. And about the Jehovah's Witnesses and what they'd put me through and everything, similar to what I'd said to Rick. And and so many people out there now that's opposed to the Watchtower, even people that weren't Jehovah's Witnesses, and possibly thought that the Jehovah's Witnesses were just good people. They're starting to see behind the doors of the tower now. They're seeing what goes on inside the Kingdom Halls. They're all smiles and blessings when they come to your door, but it's a different story when you get behind there. And I was starting to think how much stuff there is out there now on the net, on the news. How newspapers are now getting hold of things, stories. And you said you got some books as well, haven't you? So what have you found?
Well, I tell you what, I know about almost 20 years ago, I became a Christian, and when I started researching into cults and stuff like that, there was very few books on the market. There was 30 Years a Watchtower Slave, which is very dated. It's very old, but it's also very interesting because it shows how Charles Taze Russell started the Jehovah's Witnesses, but then how Rutherford came in and he made so many changes, it caused an exodus from the Watchtower. So there was that. There was Kingdom of the Cults by Walter Martin. There was Encyclopedia of Religions and Cults by John Ankerberg and John Weldon. And I mean, David Reed had a couple books. answering Jehovah's Witnesses subject by subject, answering Jehovah's Witnesses verse by verse. And I mean, there was one or two more, but they were rare, they were hard to find. And what I'm discovering is ever since, around 2007, 2008, when YouTube really took off, that was when all of a sudden the ex-Jehovah's Witness community really just exploded, and it became huge. And when you look today, if you go to Amazon, the amount of books you're going to find is just, there's a plethora. There's got to be at least 50 or 60 books just opposing the Jehovah's Witnesses that are written, and they're all using facts. They're not making stuff up. They're telling the truth, because the Watchtower, I mean, I made a post earlier this week in one of the Jehovah's Witness groups, and I posted about 15 different things, and it was false prophecies and things the Watchtower had said. The only thing I said in the post was the printing press was the worst enemy for a false prophet, and truly it is.
Yes, I saw that post that you did. Yes, it is.
Did you?
Yes, it's. I mean, that's the thing. You see, people can look back, and a lot of these issues are still available. You can pick them up in places, even if the Watchtower themselves have destroyed them. I mean, when I first come out of the religion, particularly through the first lockdown, I've been left a couple of years. I hadn't been to a meeting, but I hadn't disassociated. I just took the time to read up everything. And I actually got a friend of mine who was a Jehovah's Witness down south. Her family had been in it basically from the beginning. It had just gone down generation to generation. And they'd passed all the magazines and everything right from back to about sort of end of 1800s, 1900s. So I started reading them. And to me, it was a completely different religion to the one that is now, almost, I mean, there's the odd similarity, but for the most part, it's a completely different religion. They've stuck to nothing. And that got me thinking, and I started reading more. And then I started going online, and I started then to look at the, the sites that was sort of criticising them. I wouldn't do that before because, I just assumed, it's all apostates, they're just all liars. And then I started reading some stuff, particularly on Quora, the site called Quora. There's you can do all sorts on that site, but there's a particular bit for ex-JWs or JWs, and they ask various questions about the JW religion, and you'll get answers from JWs and ex-JWs. And there was one guy on there, Mark Jones, I think his name was. He's an atheist and he's very anti-God. But what he said about the Jehovah's Witnesses, because he had been one for about 30 odd years, I think, it was made so much sense. And it just started to ring home to me that it wasn't me that had got a problem. It was them. And it wasn't just in my kingdom hall. It was worldwide because he's American, And then I started to see other things, and I started to, the penny started to drop, and I'd been lied to, and that was it, And then I got into things like Rick Fearon's show, on the 6 screens, got into the news and listened to that, and I was just amazed by the stories that were coming out from different ex-JWs, but a lot of them all had this very similar story to tell. They can't all be lying, and they're very, very similar, a lot of them, it's a different kingdom, all different people, but of similar story, and they can't all be lying, not all of them. I mean, you might get the odd one that exaggerates, but as a rule, most ex-JWs tell the truth. They just tell it how it is. They tell you what really goes on behind the Kingdom Hall doors, and the Jehovah's Witnesses, particularly the governing body and the Watchtower, they don't like it, and so therefore it's easy to say, apostates and liars. Well, we're not. We're just looking out for other Jehovah's Witnesses. We want them to get out. We want to make sure people that are interested in a study don't get sucked in, so they have to go through the same pain and stuff that we've gone through. You know, and yeah, so I mean, I just didn't realise, you know, how much stuff was out there, and I was wishing I'd looked at some of this a lot earlier. You was talking about Amazon. I've got Amazon here actually with some of the books. I'll just go through one or two of them. A Witness to Faith, S.P. Muir. That's a paperback. It's only £4.50 from A Witness to Faith. So obviously he'd left the witnesses and turned to God, turned to Jesus. I haven't read any of these, but I intend to get some and just start reading them, and then we'll review them perhaps once a month or for a short period of time. Leaving the Witnesses, Exiting a Religion, Finding a Life. That's on Audible. You can get that for free, actually. That's Amber Scoren, Leaving the Witnesses. Go Beneath the Water. I'm not sure what that one's about, but that's an ex-witness that's wrote it. How to Escape Jehovah's Witnesses. That's an audio book. No, not him. That's Lloyd Evans. We'll leave him. Yeah, Knock, Who's There? The Truth About Jehovah's Witnesses. And then it just goes on and on and on with different books. You've got going down a bit. I'm Perfect, You're Doomed. Tales from a Jehovah's Witness. There's absolutely loads, and I just couldn't believe the amount, because I was looking at them earlier today on, on Amazon, and it's just staggering the amount of books. So I intend to get one, read it every month, and then at the end of the month we'll review it and see, and compare notes. Actually, I think it might be a good idea. So yeah. Anyways, yeah, carry on, Chad. Sorry. I hugged the screen a bit there. Sorry, carry on.
Oh, that's fine by me. Yeah, in the way, even just with the secular world, the way they're starting to wake up and pay attention. I mean, you mentioned it in newspapers and television news, radio news. They're starting to get a hold of this, and they're starting to realize, there's a problem in, something smells fishy in the state of Denmark, or rather Warwick, New York. But I mean, when you look at it and the way things have been progressing over the last 10, 15 years, we've seen 2 or 3 movies made about Jehovah's Witnesses specifically. We have seen numerous news exposés. We've seen probably, I guess, 100 new books come into print. We've seen vlogs. We have seen YouTube channels. We have seen people recording and airing their judicial committees. And, people are starting to wake up and smell the Folgers, the coffee. And what I find interesting, I was doing some research this week for the show, and I found out in the next year, there's going to be 2 blockbuster films released to theaters about Jonestown. And these have some pretty big names. One of them is called White Knight. And that is actually about one of Jim Jones's lovers and her relationship to Jones. And you're going to have Chloe Grace Moretz playing the lover, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt playing Jim Jones, which I think that's going to be a real interesting one to see. The other one is just called Jim Jones. That one is the child. I mean, it is being produced and starring Leonardo DiCaprio.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that's a huge name in Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
And my prediction for that, I'm not a prophet or anything, but my prediction for that is that these 2 movies are going to remind everybody of what happened on November 18th, 1978 in Jonestown, Guyana. It's going to wake up a whole new generation of Christians and a whole new generation of just people in general to the reality and the dangers of cults. And I'm predicting probably in the next year to 2 years, you're going to see a bunch of new ministries pop up specifically dealing with cults. And I think there's going to be quite a few bigger names in Christianity that really focus in on cults. And I think the news media, I think especially when those movies come out, I think you're going to see a lot more exposés. Because all the cults, they all use some of the same or similar mind control techniques. They all use some of the same techniques for brainwashing.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's just something they stumble upon, and they all end up doing it. And I think what you're going to see is people are going to start following the money, because that's a good way to find out where a cult is. How much money are they taking in? Where are they spending it? What does it go to? So I think you're going to probably see a lot more stuff in the next year or two about cults. And it's I think the big ones are going to be Scientology, Mormonism, and especially Jehovah's Witnesses, especially with the scandals they've had ever since Bilegate, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Yeah. I mean, you didn't used to see many things about cults and stuff, just the occasional weird film, perhaps, but that may have been based on a cult or something. But as a rule, you didn't see much. I mean, I saw a documentary about Wacko, David Koresh, was it his name? Yeah.
Yep.
I've seen a documentary and a film, I think, was made about it as well. And I've seen them, but to be honest, I never really seen much about the other stuff, and you very rarely get anything on about Jehovah's Witnesses at all. Occasionally a documentary on the BBC if something's happened, but not very often. And I think it is time that the world was woken up to these people, because they're just as dangerous a cult as any other cult out there. I mean, him and
Oh, yeah.
Jonestown. I mean, they're just as destructive in a lot of respects, and I think they could get more destructive as time goes on. I mean, they're already messing a lot of people's lives up, and people just don't know. So I think it's good that you've got all these books out there. I think it's good that you've got all the YouTube channels out there, and even just going protesting outside the Kingdom Hall occasionally, just to let people know, that you're still about, and and what they're really like. Don't let them get away with it. All right, protesting outside the Kingdom Hall maybe doesn't have quite a bigger effect as being on YouTube or whatever, but it's all chipping away at the Watchtower. It's all chipping away at the wall, and eventually we're taking it down brick by brick. Each of us doing our own thing. And I think it's good that we've got all this stuff out here. And I also think it's great that the press now are starting to get hold of these things. I'm seeing it more and more often in different newspapers, particularly around Europe. And even Britain, it's been a bit slower than the others to have a go, but even they're starting to pull things up, and there was one I saw, it was from 2021, and it was questioning why the JW, it was the Guardian, I think, or the Express. It was an English newspaper anyway. I think it was the Guardian. And it was questioning why Jehovah's Witnesses had anything to do with the UN when they said it was the beast, and yet they had membership of it. Now, that was just only last year that was brought up in one of our newspapers. Now, I wouldn't have seen anything like that a few years ago. They didn't really say much about the witness, unless somebody got accused of child abuse. It wasn't even mentioned,
Right.
the religion really. But now, people are starting to become wise to it, and they're starting to realise just how dangerous they are. And it's thanks to programs like we're doing, and like Rick does, and like people do on YouTube, and podcasts, whatever it is they're doing to get it out there. They're all making a difference. And I just wished I'd seen more of this when I was a witness. So I could have got out a bit sooner. I think it would have made me think a bit sooner, you know what I mean, and sort of made more of an effort to leave, So, especially if I'd have known I was as lied to as I had been, you know what I mean? So, yeah.
Yeah, and one thing I got to bring up, I was talking about Jonestown a minute ago because for some reason I have been on a huge kick about Jonestown. But one thing I was thinking is when you look at what happened with Jonestown, 909 people died at Jonestown, 910 if you count Jim Jones.
Mm.
Five people died at the airstrip in Port Kaituma, and 4 people died in Georgetown. That was all at the orders of Jim Jones and his inner circle. That was a tragedy. That all happened in 45 minutes.
Mm.
You can go online, you can listen, just type in Jonestown death tape on YouTube, and you can actually listen to what was going on. Even when Jones's wife tried to stop it, and he's yelling, "Mother, mother, mother, please." He was yelling at his wife. He referred to his wife as mother. And, as bad as that tragedy is, that got huge press because this all happened in about 45 minutes.
Yeah.
But with Jehovah's Witnesses, if you look at what they've been doing over the past 75 years, how many ex-Jehovah's Witnesses have committed suicide? How many children have died because of a failure to receive a surgery or a blood transfusion? How many women have died in childbirth because they couldn't get a blood transfusion? I mean, when you do the math on it, and I'm not trying to downplay Jonestown. I'm not doing that at all. It was a tragedy. It was horrible.
Mm.
But when you do the math on it, it's quite possible and very likely that worldwide more people have died because of Jehovah's Witness doctrine, because of Watchtower doctrine, than what died at Jonestown. And I know that's kind of something you really got to think about. But when you think about it, it's definitely possible.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So,
If you think about all the years, like you say, that they've been going, I mean, like you say, Jonestown, it was a terrible thing. I'm not taking anything away from that.
Yes.
But like you say, it was a one-off thing. It was just that group, wasn't it? So, and it was terrible. But if you think about all the witnesses, like you say, that have died over the years because of lack of blood transfusion, because of committed suicide, and even the ones that have been mentally scarred, even, if they haven't actually died, the life has been ruined. These scars that they can't get over, they've perhaps been raped as a child or something, or raped as an adult even, or badly beaten by the husband, things like that. They all leave scars, don't they? Scars that sometimes people just can't get over. And sometimes they end up committing suicide even after they've left the witnesses, as we know, it's happened just recently. And with different ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, close people that we dearly thought a lot of, and yet, they couldn't cope and it's all because of their past experiences of being a witness and present day experiences, because perhaps they got family in that's still causing them bother, and because they're not, they're disassociating with them, or they're disfellowshipped them, and they're shunning them, whatever. So yeah, I think over a period of all them years, I mean, to me, that it would be, well, they would call it a genocide, wouldn't they? If you put all them figures together, it's a mass murder, really. I mean, because they would have.
I got to point out.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got to point this out because you brought up Waco. You brought up David Koresh and the Branch Davidians in Waco, Texas. Everybody thought, when David Koresh died, that was it. What most people don't realize, the Branch Davidians, the church that David Koresh started, it's still around. And they actually are gaining, it's mainly online, but there is a couple people that show up at the church a couple times a year. And I mean, when you think about it, that's crazy. What happened with this polygamous cult, with the child rape and all this other stuff, and child polygamy, and yet people are still interested in being Branch Davidians. I mean, it's mind blowing.
It's bizarre, isn't it? It's really bizarre. I mean, you just can't understand that mentality, but it happens, and that's how the JWs are. You know, I mean, I was only saying to a friend the other day that if the JWs collapsed, you know, overnight, or they took the money and ran, and just there was no more religion anymore, no more JW religion anymore. I was saying that, you know, I think a lot of the people, a lot of the JWs, they wouldn't be able to cope, because they wouldn't know what to do with their lives. A lot of them have been there since being born. You know, they've known nothing else. They've had complete control over their lives. But, you know, even when you're at home, you're still thinking in JW terms. You still don't, you know, you're still feeling guilty if you do something, you know, that you perhaps shouldn't be doing. You know, because you're thinking all the time, oh, you know, well, Jehovah's watching over me, even if they aren't, and they drum that into you, you know. So when and if it collapses, and I think it will at some point, you know, they're just not going to know what to do. It's going to be like the masters, you know, leaving the dog, you know, in the middle of nowhere. You know, dumping the dog, and you know, the dog's been a loyal pet to them for years, but you know, they've decided they're going to up and run. They don't want the dog anymore, so they dump it in the middle of the field. The poor dog sits there for days, perhaps, looking over the hill to see if they're coming back, but they won't be doing. And this will be the same with the governing body. You know, they'll just abandon the brothers and sisters, all them people that have done all that work for all them years. A lot of them been very, very faithful. You know, a good few of them are really good people as well. They mean well, even if they're misguided. But they're going to be stranded. They're not going to know what to do. They're going to keep looking out to, oh, you know, the governing body will be coming back, or whatever, or something will happen. We'll get guidance, but they won't. And you know, it's going to be awful, you know, for them. And it worries me a bit, you know, because I just think, well, what are they going to do? You know, where are they going to go? Who are they going to turn to? You know, and I really don't like the idea of a lot of ex-JW saying, "No, we told you so." You know, well, yeah, we did, but that's not the point. You know, if they're in that mess, then we need to be helping them. But, you know, there's going to be an awful lot, you know, when it does finally collapse, and one day it will. And the reason it will is because of things coming out in the press, coming out in books. You know, like you say, there's been more films now. I mean, I watched one on Netflix. That was not about the JWs, but it was it called Children of God or something like that? I can't remember exactly, but that was about a cult. I mean, the only difference really between them and the Jehovah's Witnesses was the fact that they all lived together in a commune type thing, in a single house. I mean, there was loads of them in there, but the common things were, if I hadn't known she wasn't a Jehovah's Witness, the ex cult member who was giving, and a mother who was giving a sort of statement as to what it was like, if I hadn't known they weren't Jehovah's Witnesses and I'd just listened to what they said, I would have swore they were Jehovah's Witnesses by what they said, because it was so similar. And I've noticed in all these cults, and what really stands out in cults, I think particularly more so than perhaps other religions, is that it all goes down the same road. You've got child molestation, paedophilia going on. You know, it seems rife in these cults. It was with David Koresh. It was probably in the Johannesburg thing. I mean, you know, all these cults, you hear of it, don't you? You know, it goes on.
Yeah.
And it seems to be quite rife, and nothing's ever done about it. You know, the poor victims just suffer. You know, they all seem to sort of shun people if they're thrown out or whatever, or if they decide to leave. You know, they make it as hard as possible to leave. But then if you do manage to leave, you know, you're shunned, or you know, and your life's made as difficult as possible. Same with all the cults; they all seem the same. You know, and it just led me to thinking it was step by step, and I just thought, a few years ago, if somebody suggested to me that a Johannesburg sort of Johannestown, type situation could happen with the JWs, and I would have said no. But now I'm not so sure. And I think it's good that we're getting these books and these films out there to remind people just how dangerous cults are, and particularly when it's XJWs, because people will see the similarities between them, Jonestown and Waco and wherever else, So yeah,
Sorry about that. My phone just
that's all right. It happens. Yeah. Anyway, so carry on. Yeah.
Me. Yeah. But there we go. I know. What was the other thing? It was just on the tip of my tongue. I was going to bring it up. I think there's a time coming very soon where the Watchtower is either going to have to, out of necessity, they're either going to have to come out, admit they were wrong, and try to make things right, which after 140 years of lying, that's going to be a little bit hard. 140, 150 years.
Yeah.
And a lot of the true blue JWs are going to stay in, or try to, where they're going to splinter off and start their own little groups and their own little cults. In fact, we've already seen that with Greg Stafford. He was a Jehovah's Witness, and he debated Christian apologists. And I mean, the debate he did against James White, he was their number one apologist defending Watchtower doctrine, and he got just utterly destroyed in this debate against James White. And it's just, I think they're either going to have to try to make things right, which is going to backfire on them, or, they're going to have to take the money and run.
Yeah.
I honestly believe that with all my heart. It's got to be one of those two things, because they're not just going to all of a sudden close down and that's that. They can't do that. So
no.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see where it goes.
Yeah, I mean, what I don't understand is the media centre, because to be honest, I was thinking they would probably close the Kingdom Halls, bit by bit. They would sell them off bit by bit, sort of sneakily do it, and then sort of perhaps go on to being online. I was actually quite surprised when they opened the Kingdom Halls up again. That was a bit of a shock. I wasn't sure they was even going to after the COVID pandemic, but. They're not being very well attended from what I can see, a lot of them, so it wouldn't surprise me if they don't just say, oh, well, we'll go back to Zoom, and, it'll be an online religion. And then, they'll sell all the Kingdom Halls, which all the money will go, into the head office, and then into Bethel, in wherever it is, and and they'll have complete control of all the money, so it would be possible for them to do a bunk, and it wouldn't surprise me if one day that's not what they do, but I don't see it happening overnight. They're not just going to suddenly, I don't believe, sell all the Kingdom Halls and all the printing presses, etc., as somebody had suggested to me the other day. I'm still not sure about that. I don't see that happening, but it is odd that they've built this media centre if they are going to do a runner now. I don't know what that's about. Maybe they're just going to build it and then perhaps, give it a few years, sell it again. I don't know. Perhaps be worth a lot more money then. I don't know. But yeah, I just don't understand what's going on there, really. And you'd think with Armageddon around the corner, why do they need a media centre anyway? So. What use is that going to be, but yeah. So I don't know what the score is with that. I don't know. I mean, maybe that's how they're going to do it. Maybe that's how they're going to get people to turn to being an online religion, because they'll just do it through the media centre, and they'll just put out videos and stuff like that, I guess. I don't know, but it does make you wonder, but like I say, these books out there and stuff, people can can relate, and all these people are just normal people. We're all just normal folk. We're not got an agenda. I mean, yeah, we call the Watchtower out and we call the JW Org out, and particularly the governing body. But we haven't got anything personal against JWs themselves. I mean, in fact, we love most of them, but it's a case of we just want to, make sure that they get the same chances as we do to be free of control by men, and if you turn to God or Christ or whatever, then that's great. But if you just leave, at least you're free from them shackles, and then there's always time to do whatever you need to do in the future. But, yeah, so I just think, there's so much out there. And I do think, it's a good idea, perhaps, if we do look into these things and have a good read, because I think, we sometimes relate more when we'll see a story and you think, oh well, that's my story almost, but different time, different place, different people, but the same story, and it is quite encouraging in a way, upsetting in some ways that these people have gone through this, but encouraging that they've had the will to write these books and to let people know, or whatever it is they do, go on social media and do it, whatever it is, they're all doing the thing. I'm just wondering if anybody wants to come in with any comments, because time's pushing on. It's 25 past 11 here at night. I don't know what time it is there. So
5:25 Central Time, 6:25.
Oh, right, yeah. So, but yeah, we've been in 25 minutes. So I'm just wondering if anybody wants to call in, if anyone's got any opinions.
*6 on your telephone pad. Come on
Yeah.
on. Go to Chad. Go ahead. You're on with us.
I'd like to make a comment.
Oh, yes, go ahead,
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, I would like to have more information, because you were saying that a lot of the cults are similar. I've kind of noticed that too, especially speaking with others who've been a part of Jehovah's Witness-like cults. What do you see as happening to them in the future, and how are they like Jehovah's Witnesses?
Well, I think in the future, especially with these two movies that are going to be blockbusters, they're going to be huge. I'm already planning on going to see both. I'm going to reserve tickets. But I think it's going to be a big negative impact on the kingdom of the cults, because it's going to make people find books like Kingdom of the Cults. And at that point, they're going to see there's a lot more to cults than just Jonestown. And then after they read Kingdom of the Cults and they learn about theological heresies, they're going to end up doing research and find out some of the sociological heresies. The mind control and the family control. In fact, I just saw yesterday Matt Slick from carm.org, the Christian Apologetics Research Ministry, carm.org. He went to a church. It was UPCI, United Pentecostal Church International. They're Oneness Pentecostals. They're another non-Christian cult. And he went to talk to their leader, who's the former president of that organization, to challenge him face-to-face to a debate. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that happening. I think we're going to see a lot of Christians standing up, which is what as a Christian, I want to see that, because there's an old saying: cults are the unpaid bills of the church. And I wholeheartedly believe that. And I think it's time that the church pays its dues and we start fighting back against the kingdom of the cults. So that's what I see happening in the next year. And also, when it comes down to how they're similar, they're always print, especially today, they are always print organized. The one book that was not found at Jonestown was the Bible. But there was plenty of People's Temple newsletters. There was plenty of copies of Pravda, which was the USSR, the Soviet Union's propaganda newspaper. There was plenty of stuff from Cuba and other communist countries. So we see that. In fact, Guyana at the time was a socialist country. And I mean, we see that in Jonestown, there was all this propaganda. What do you see in the Watchtower? The Watchtower, they have all their own magazines, their own books. The only thing they use the Bible for is proof texting. They don't actually study the Bible. They just use it for their own needs. You see the same thing with the Mormons. They publish Pearl of Great Price, the Book of Mormon, Doctrine and Covenants. There's even a Joseph Smith translation of the Bible where he adds over 100 chapters. Not to mention, you also have all of other publications that come out of Salt Lake City. But you're starting to see, even with the cults that are on the down low, like the UPCI, what you're starting to see even with them is now they've created their own study Bible just to promote their heresies, where they used to just have special tracts. Now they're starting to develop their own literature, like books and everything. So it's, you know, you see a lot of that kind of a thing from the cults, is they're always publishing their own materials. They're always circulating their own materials. And another thing you also see is their big target, and I'm not saying these are the only people at all, but one of their big targets that they prey on is evangelical Christians, because they already know evangelical Christians believe in God. So now it's just a matter of brainwashing them. Whereas with an unbeliever, you have to be careful not to inform them that you're a cult. You have to keep them away from anything that would point to them being a cult. You have to teach them everything from scratch. Whereas at least with someone with a religious background, they have a general idea of things. So basically, you're just adding to what they already know. And I was telling a friend of mine this week, sometimes the only way to unlearn something is to relearn it as something else, or to replace it with something else. And essentially, that's what the cults do, is they'll take something you already know or already believe, and then they twist it. So those are just a couple of the similarities, but also just the idea of being able to convince you. They use your own desires. They use your own wants. They use your own dreams. And they use just the fact that most people want to help other people out. They use that and they exploit it to get the people to serve their organization. And that's a problem, because once you're serving an organization, they tell them you're serving God, when in reality, you're not serving God. You're serving an organization. And that's a problem. So I hope that answers your question.
Chad,
Yeah.
don't you think that if people start turning against cults, that they might turn against evangelical Christians even more, because they're going to say, well, this cult came from this religious belief, and it could backfire at the same time, and it could turn everybody that hears anything about a cult, it could scare them so bad. I mean, like when people leave Jehovah's Witnesses, they're mad when they realize it's been a cult and they spent all these years as a Jehovah's Witness. When they first come out, 90% don't pick up a Bible again for years, if ever. Because the last thing they want to hear about is God and that Bible, or any Bible. I'm saying that from personal experience and from the people that I know that, personally have totally turned against cults, but they also turned against Christianity. They turned against any kind of a religion. And it's not the religion itself, it's just the fact that they've had it, and they blamed God for a while. I mean, that's just...
And they're scared of falling back into it.
Yeah.
And they're also scared of falling back into another cult, which is something else that happened with survivors of Jonestown. Quite a few of them got sucked into other cults after the People's Temple closed down. But to answer your question, I'm not concerned about that, because that's actually what happened with Christianity in the first place. That's and if you get a book called The Apostolic Fathers and you read it, you'll read that's basically, there was a huge propaganda push from Rome, and Rome was painting it that the Christians were all evil, that they were what's it called when you eat other people? Cannibals. They were slandering them as cannibals, and they were saying that they're all atheists because they don't believe that there's multiple gods, that there's only one God, and their worldview was one of polytheism, that there was many gods. So I'm not so much concerned about that, because I'm trusting that God is in control of that. So that's where I'm at. What about you, Roland?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's always a chance that people are going to, throw the baby out with the bathwater. When they leave a cult, particularly Jehovah's Witnesses, or, well, any cult really, it can make them bitter. I mean, you do come out quite bitter, especially if you've had a rough time with them, as most of us have done. When we come out, we've done our time, and it's been like a prison sentence for a lot of us, worse in some respects, so there is always a chance that people are going to come out bitter, and I do know people like that. I know XJWs that are totally atheist, and and I can understand that. I don't condemn them for it. I don't sort of, because I can understand it. I can understand how that can happen. It's a shame, but it does. But no, I don't think you can, I don't think these films or people, talking about these cults and making them aware of what they're like, I don't think we can not do that just because we might scare one or two others from becoming Christian or turn them against other Christians, because that's going to happen anyway, at times. So,
Right.
And I think more so people probably eventually will come back to maybe Christianity, or even if they don't, they'll settle down. But yeah, I mean, what I find, is with these cults, though, that they all act very similar, as I said, and I think it's important that people see them similarities, because only when you see how similar they are. And I think by watching things on Netflix and whatever other films are coming out, I think you can see the similarities so much that, it starts to make you think, well, hang on a minute, that could be us, that could be me, as a JW. I have no control over my life. I can't go to parties. I have to earn salvation. It's not a given according to the Jehovah's Witnesses, Seventh-day Adventists, Mormons, I believe. It's not a given. As it should be. As we know it to be. But and it's all the same with these cults. They all do the same thing. It's all, you've got to work at everything. You've got to be this. You've got to be that. You've got to keep quiet about things that go on behind the doors. If a religion is a true religion, and if they've got nothing to hide, then they don't mind you knowing what's going on behind the doors. I mean, our church doesn't. You can come in and ask us anything, and we'll tell you. We don't hide anything. And I think if things are starting to be hid, then that you've got to start smelling a rat. I mean, they can fudge it and make it out to be, whatever, they can sort of fudge it and say, oh, well, that's just for the elders to know or whatever, and yeah, some things you've got to keep private as a religious leader. You don't go telling everybody everything. But at the same time, the amount of privacy that they have is ridiculous. I mean, keeping names of paedophiles a secret, keeping paedophiles safe, having stupid strict rules like you smoke, you get disfellowshipped, you have sex with a minor and you're fine. That's okay. And they start sort of, they're all doomsday as well, aren't they? Everybody's, it's always sort of an Armageddon scenario is just round the corner. Or, I mean, if you think about, who was that one that thought he was going to go up in a spaceship? He was another one, wasn't he? An oldish man. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And it's all about the end of days. There's all that finale. You know what I mean? We're all going to die, or we're all going to just go through this terrible thing at the end. Now, they went to the extreme and they took poison and stuff like that. Would the JWs do that eventually? I can't say for definite no anymore. I wouldn't have thought so years ago. But now, the way I've seen them going, the way I've seen it progressing, the way they have more and more control than even when I was a JW, it's worrying. And they could, they could get them to do anything. But I do believe they're certainly going to get ripped off. They're going to be left with nothing. And I think it's important people get to know about these things. And if it's by watching films about cults, if it's by video or Instagram, well, not Instagram, YouTube and such platforms, then the more the better. And yeah, like I say, one or two people are going to be bitter. They're going to realise they've been lied to, and they're not going to want anything to do with religion again, and that's a shame. But I think for the most part, a lot of people will turn. If they're already loving God, they will turn to God, back to God eventually, because I think you become spiritually lost if you don't, you know what I mean? And your life doesn't seem to have meaning, Well, certainly for me, it didn't until I found God again, and really got to know him. Yeah. Sorry, carry on. Yeah. Hello, caller.
Roland, I was going to tell you, this is still Debbie. I was going to tell you that's what I was going to say, is that eventually people who really have a good heart, they're not going to stay bitter. They're not going to stay angry. Eventually, hopefully, they're going to move on with their life and hopefully come back to Christ. Because even I was angry for a while and lost, just like you said, spiritually. But I never really lost my whole love deep down that I had for God. And I came back, and then I really wanted to be an activist, but this was back even before Scream started. Some of us were trying to do stuff like with the blog and things like that before YouTube really got big. And then some of us tried to do videos on Facebook and then YouTube, but just didn't keep it up. But I agree, without some of these platforms that are exposing these cults, And I know in Australia, it might be the BBC, I don't know. They have a show called Four Corners in 60 Minutes.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
In Australia, and we have that in America too. And there are some good expose shows about all different cults, and they have a few on Jehovah's Witnesses where they actually interview people that have been disfellowshipped or that are trying to expose them, and the news crews go out and interview them, and they end up making it like the show Four Corners. And I'm thinking Four Corners is the same as 60 Minutes.
Right.
They have a 60 Minutes Australia, and I watch that on the Roku, channels. And but I do agree with you that the thing is, though, when people do learn about like Jehovah's Witnesses being a cult and they've trusted them all their life, they're afraid to trust again. And so there's still a wall up, because you're like, well, what if I go to that church? And you out too. There's still a wall there, because as a Jehovah's Witness, I remember when we would drive by a church when I was a little kid, my dad would say, hey, there's a school for the blind. And, with meaning a sarcastic, way.
I know what you mean, yeah. Yeah, I mean, the thing is,
if anybody's listening, they wouldn't know what I meant.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing is, like you, when I first left the JWs a year or two back, I hadn't been there for a couple of years, but I'd sort of been PMO for a while, and then I just stopped going to the meetings. And but I didn't disassociate for a start, because I too wasn't sure. I wasn't sure I'd made the right decision. I wasn't sure whether I should leave. I love God, and the reason I went to so many meetings was because I thought that's where God wanted me. I thought that was the true religion. And although the brothers and sometimes the sisters, but mainly the brothers, particularly the elders, made my life an absolute misery, I was there for God. I wasn't there for their company or there to socialize with them people. To be honest, I couldn't stand most of them by the end, but and the thought of living forever with them was just a nightmare. But I thought, well, I'd rather be in hell if, although they don't believe in such a place, to me, that would just be a spiritual hell, really, on earth, living with them people for eternity. No. But I when I first left, I wasn't sure what to do. I was spiritually lost. I knew I needed God in my life, but I knew that they were wrong, because I'd been doing some reading and I found out, all the stuff about them, all the lies, all the false prophecies, and I realized I'd been lied to, and that made me bitter, because then I just thought, well, 19 years of my life just flashed through my head. Literally like I was sort of dying, but I was seeing all my 19 years of being a JW, all this strife I'd been through, putting up with, because I thought I was just being tested by my brothers, by Satan, by them being nasty, but I was just kept going. I was showing God I loved him. And then I found out it was all real. So I thought, well, if God's true religion isn't God's true religion, as I've been led to believe, which is the JW org, then I was still unsure about going in other churches, because to me, they were still right about them. They practiced idolatry. They was into weird stuff, talking in tongues, and it was all creepy stuff according to them, all mad. And so I was very reluctant to go and find any church. For me, it was just a case of praying, and after that prayer, everything became clear, and I ended up in the church that I'm in now, and I'm very, very happy, and what that's done, by finding out what the truth is about other religions or other Christian denominations, and that they're not all idol worshipping, devil, dancing, demon loving, people that they make them out to be. I got comfortable, and then that led me to working in a hospital now. Once or twice a week, I go into a psychiatric hospital, and I work with the chaplain services. And I go in and do Bible studies and stuff with the patients, and I couldn't have done that as a Jehovah's Witness, and because I was too frightened to work with these other people. I mean, I'm working with different Christian denominations. I mean, there's pastors there, there's vicars, there's Catholics, and I have to work along with all of them at some point. I have to get, we have to make contact, and we have a chat and stuff. We don't necessarily teach exactly the same thing, but we all agree pretty much on the same thing, that the patients are the ones that, need the help. And so we put our slight differences aside, and we just do our best, And I couldn't have done that as a Jehovah's Witness. And it was because, of reading things like I read, looking online, seeing people, XJWs talking. Some of them had gone into religion and they was happy, and they, made me realize it wasn't all this spooky nonsense that they went on with, that they said that it was like this. Some people, I mean, they swing incense and they do talk in tongues, and that's fine if you're into that sort of thing. But I found the church I went to was it's just a normal church. We sing, we pray, and we listen to sermons, and it's not particularly happy clappy or anything like that. But had I not been sort of going online and reading stuff from XJWs, I wouldn't have known that, and I probably wouldn't have gone to a church now. Even, I'd have just possibly tried to, worship God in my own ways, but I couldn't do that. I needed Him in my life, and I think most Jehovah's Witnesses, they've got that love. They keep going to the meetings, and I think inwardly something sort of drew them to that in the first place. It wasn't just because they was misled and what have you. They was looking for something. They was looking for religion. They was looking for meaning, and they thought the Jehovah's Witnesses was going to give them that, as I did. They was looking for a better future, and they was promised a better future by the Jehovah's Witnesses. But of course, that was a lie. So I think, yeah, well, like I say, there will be one or two that do leave Christianity and they'll believe in God. But I think for the most part, most people want to know God, and I think they will find Him again if they look, so.
Yeah. Any other callers? Wow, we had some dead air there for a second. And I would just add to that, as a Christian, I believe that nobody under any circumstances can come to God unless He draws them. I mean, it said that in the Gospel of John.
Yes.
So it's not my business to try to get church membership up. It's just my business to preach the gospel.
Yeah.
And I leave the rest to God because I have no other control. So I think that's a big thing. And also, I think when people come out and they start doing research into cults, what they're going to find out is there are entire organizations that are designed specifically against cults. And I think what they're going to find out is most of these organizations are Christian organizations. So I think that's going to help quite a few of the people who are learning about cults is they're going to say, wow, there's organizations that have been around since before I was born that have taken stances against cults. So I think that's going to be a real big thing there. But I'm not concerned about the church. So but I'm not concerned over it dying or going away or whatever else.
No, well, that's it. I mean, I'm the same. And some people, I mean, talking about people sort of leaving God and leaving Christianity. I mean, I don't think, really they do. I think they just, fortunately, they sometimes, change to things that they shouldn't be doing. They make up for it in other ways, but I think the majority, really. I mean, if you think about all the friends we've got on those Facebook sites,
Oh yeah.
Help Jehovah's Witnesses, XJW Witness Recovery, all those ones, Jehovah's Witness and Friends. The majority of those XJWs are actually born again Christians, aren't they? You know what I mean? The majority.
I think a good large portion of them are, and
I've met portion. Yeah,
and I've met 2 or 3 Christians that are just opposers, like me.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's what you say.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, I think about all the ones I've got to know, and the majority were XJWs, and most of them now are born again Christian. So I think you will be led if you want to go that way, and if you're open to that, and you open your mind, then I think you will find God and what have you. And if not, just being free from the shackles of the Watchtower has got to be a benefit for your mental health anyway. You know what I mean? It's better I would say it's better to be in no religion than to be in that one. Just purely in that one, because you've got the same outcome at the end, regardless of your belief, haven't you? So yeah. But I mean, I just think that more and more people are, they're leaving, but they do seem to be, a lot of them are turning back to God, but they're finding a proper relationship with God, and if they're not doing that, they're going out doing charitable work, as they may not be sort of Christian as such, but they have a good heart. They go out, they do what they can to help others, and they use their experience to help others, so yeah.
And I see.
Matt speaking?
Hello?
Is what?
Go ahead.
Yeah, is this Matt?
No, this is Chad.
I mean, I'm just curious who it is that's making the comment now. Your name?
Oh, that was Roland.
Oh, yeah, that's me. That's Roland. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Hi, Roland. For me though, I've seen, my experience has been kind of the opposite. The majority of the ones I know, and many of them are my really good friends, but that are XJWs are now atheists.
Right.
That's fine, because I don't push my Christian belief on them, and they don't push it on me. I know some on both sides will push it, but I had the very similar experience as you and as the other person that was commenting about going to visiting a first church, because I was in Jehovah's Witnesses for 50 years since a little small boy, and so the first one I went to, I felt so inadequate because my vocabulary was so small, because of being stuck in Watchtower. We only learned their vocabulary. So I happened to get there before services started, and the pastor was actually training another pastor and taking him around, showing him the different Sunday schools. And he said he'd take and show me around. And I said, okay, you're going to have to hold my hand and kind of spoon feed me, because I don't know the jargon. I was in a cult for 50 years. But I said, I'm wide open to learn new things, but I got to tell you right off the bat, if snakes come out, I'm going to be out of here.
Funny enough, I said exactly the same thing to my pastor. I said to him, if I come in here and you're dancing about with snakes, when I first met him.
It was younger.
Yeah.
Invited up there. A lot of different rooms, and they usually did it by age group. And so I went ahead with my daughter just so we'd be together. And there's younger people, and I say younger people, young adults in their 20s and 30s. And so they're sitting there studying. It's kind of like I don't want to say like studying a Watchtower, but it's some kind of commentary. And we're sitting around this conference table, probably 20 of us there. And after this one woman started giving her answer out of that magazine, the one across the other end of the table says, well, that's real interesting, but I totally disagree. I about fell out of my chair. I said, what? My God, what a disagree. I've never heard of that.
Yes. Yeah, well, I mean, I think you're right. I mean, there are some that do turn atheists, but I mean, it's just been my personal experience. But I mean, you say it's different for you. It would be interesting actually to see how many people do turn atheists and who do turn to Christianity or other religions. Perhaps it might perhaps be an interesting thing to find out. Perhaps
This brother that just called in and said. The people, that's been my experience too.
Right.
They've been turned to atheism.
Right. Well, I could be wrong then. I could be wrong. You putting me right tonight. But I mean, I was just going on the fact that the people that I personally know or know of that have been ex-JWs, the majority have turned to being born again Christians. I mean, some have gone to other Christian denominations or other religions, but and some have turned atheists. Yeah, I mean they're staunch atheists and they hate you talking about anything religious. But that's because they've been hurt, and they unfortunately blame God, along with the Watchtower, but it's not God, is it? It's the governing body. It's men that's done that to them, not God. But unfortunately, some, I know I can understand that. Like I say, when I first left, I was a little bit bitter about the fact I'd been lied to, and I suppose I could have quite easily turned atheist. But the point was, I just thought about it for a while. I prayed about it, and fortunately for me, I found God, and I found Him more so than when I was a Jehovah's Witness. I thought I loved God as a Jehovah's Witness, and I did, but I didn't understand God as a Jehovah's Witness as I do now. So, but yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, people are calling in saying that, a lot of them have turned atheists. So actually, I might be wrong, so it's interesting. Thanks for your comment. Anything else to say? Anybody else got anything to say? Or you got another comment?
Actually, it looks like it's time for us to say goodbye, isn't it, Rick?
Just about. You got about 2 minutes.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, we'll wrap it up now, Rick, because I didn't realise where we was in time. We've been talking and having so much fun that, with the viewers and the listeners, it's been great. So pleased they all called in, and thank you very much. It all adds to the programme. So we love you talking up and listening, and it makes our job easier. And look forward to seeing you in a fortnight.
Yep, we'll see you guys in a couple of weeks. Make sure you tune in, give us a call, and say hi. So
okay.
Until next time, I'm just going to go ahead and sign off. My name is Chad Burns. This is Returning to Light. And thank you guys for watching. Roland?
Thank you, Chad. That's great to have you along as co-host again. And we're doing all right, aren't we? So thank you for being there for us and helping us out with all your research and stuff. And I'd just like to thank the viewers once again for coming in and making the programme what it is. And I shall say good night and sign off from the north of England. Good night, all.
Good night, Roland.
Bye,
and
everybody.
Good night, Chad. My goodness, great program. Now, listen, all those listening in right now on Facebook and YouTube, it will discontinue right here. This program is ending. We will be back in about 5 minutes, and we will do our JW World News as well as all the programs tonight on the 6 screens. Will be on YouTube, Facebook, on the 6 Screens Video Suite, and on our radio network, as well as a number of other platforms. So by all means, stay with us. Don't you guys go anywhere. We're going to end this broadcast. We'll be right back in a few minutes.